As the great-granddaughter of one of the last medicine men of the Ute Mountain Ute tribe, Regina's traditions, strong beliefs in culture, customs, and prayers are for all people, striving to create a better tomorrow through a lifetime of traditional education for many generations. Please join me in welcoming Regina Lopez-Whiteskunk. Sorry, I didn't. Thank you and welcome. After all that poetry and singing and dancing, I thought, woo, this is going to be a tough act to follow. But I first off want to, again, say thank you to all those people that hosted me graciously, whether it was dinner, whether it was just offering me your office space, and just the space and opportunity to engage in conversation and get to know some of you. I was very, very fortunate today to be able to spend some time with some students. And as a little techie in me, I'm gonna share something, and hopefully it'll. Whispers from the past. The sun sets on the day as we sit and listen to the whispers from yesterday. We listen to the stories of time gone by. In the beginning, the movement of our people was and still is sovereign. Our existence as Native American people are of the land. We feel the earth beneath our feet. We utilize the water and land in many different ways. It nurtures our spirit, our souls, life, and existence. From birth, that was the first day of our prayer, in when our grandparents offered us into this world and started this prayer and started this walk. We are who we are because of our ancestors, because of the prayers, because of what the land provides for us today and what will be tomorrow. The hills, the rocks, the twisting of the rivers and breeze from the gentle winds know no boundaries. State, county, and reservation lines mean nothing to that of the landscape that tells stories of the people and days gone by. Prayers are walked, lived, and answered. Our elders have told us where to collect the herbs and of the places where we can go to draw strength, where we can go to find the earth beneath our feet. Mother Earth knows our footsteps, for I have danced, ran, walked, and treaded my path ever so respectfully. I hiked into the canyons to see the rocks and the stories from long ago. I stop and I feel saddened to see bullet holes, words scratched into places that show disrespect for the story. I stop and feel saddened. The story that tells me of the trails and waterways of surrounding landscapes. I go into the spaces to listen to the trees, sing to me and ease my restlessness, to seek a sense of healing from within me. The earth is my connection to the knowledge of the land and the stories that are whispered in the gentle winds. I have prepared for ceremony and prayer. I've taken off my shoes. I have walked barefoot, connecting with our Mother Earth, seeking knowledge, strength, and grace. She feels and knows my footsteps. For I have tread on her before in prayer. I kneel down beneath a large cedar tree, allowing for hundreds of years of wisdom to be communicated in a way no one will ever understand. Every day we walk a prayer. It is not just practiced on Sunday. It's lived from the day we come into this world, and it's lived from the moment you wake. I sing a song of days gone by, a simple time, and my passion and love for the land. I visit sacred spaces and places to celebrate the symbols carved on the canyon walls. I celebrate by announcing my presence with prayers, dances, and songs. Hear my voice and acknowledge my actions and movement, I ask. As I move softly, I acknowledge the ancient movements of my ancestors that once roamed the landscape and left their stories scorned on the walls upon the land, sharing with me where the wildlife, waterways, and trails on the sacred places and sacred spaces are. The stories on the canyon walls are gifts shared with people, no matter the language which each speak. Protecting the landscape, especially the rock art, is many conversations had and continue to today. Threats are numerous, but hope remains in our hearts. Oh, Grandpa, my heart sings a song as I honor the ancestors resting in peace out on the land. I seek understanding from all the colors and places. Our parents and elders always taught us that when we're out on the land, be mindful of those who once came through before us. In another time, the area was their home, pharmacy, and hunting sites. From time to time, the old ones return in their times and space. Be respectful. We leave what is out there, but we are the caretakers of the time. Keep the places, the spaces sacred. It is our responsibility to keep their footsteps and movements sacred, for that was our beginnings. The ancestral Puebloan people we honor and celebrate, care for in reverence, respect, and the being of their voices for the sacred time and spaces, places out on the land. The canyon walls are our guides, recorded knowledge from days gone by. I pray it will remain for our next 7 generations and beyond. Hear my songs, join my song, dance my dance, and celebrate the prayers of our elders. That piece was published in Outside Magazine early in the spring. So I'm a member of the Ute Mount Ute tribe. I'm of the Uinta and the Weemanooch band of Utes. And as many of you know, this is the homelands of my people and my ancestors. I know some of the students that were in some of the groups that I got to speak with. I encouraged many of you to share your songs, to share your artwork, your drawings, to tell your stories through these different ways that you can communicate with people. So on my first slide here, if some of you can see where the signature is, this is actually a piece that I drew. There's so many different things that we can do to tell our stories. Like in my piece, and like many other pieces that I've had published and contributed to many different magazines as well as a few books. One of the things that leads me on my path is knowing who my teachers are and acknowledging where the knowledge came from. And for me, my biggest teacher is the land. And that's where I always see our knowledge truly comes from, because that is who taught my grandparents. That is who taught my ancestors. So in order for us to seek healing, we've got to know where we came from. So historically, and mind you, everything that is documented, and I'm going to say this with deepest respect to the academic world, is merely an interpretation of somebody who collects data and records it and gets it published. So, this is what they've told us that our territory once was. They say that it wasn't quite the entire state of Colorado. I say it was the entire state of Colorado. And I largely like to say this because really in our world today, especially for someone like me and an indigenous person, and that doesn't matter what part of the world an indigenous person is representing, there's their way, and then there's our indigenous living knowledge. What does indigenous living knowledge mean? That means to me that when the information was given to me, it was either my parents or my grandparents or an elder, but they had a heartbeat, they were breathing, they were living this life. What a lot of archaeologists, anthropologists, and professionals of that sort do is they collect data, they analyze it, then they interpret it, and then they tell us what they perceive as the story they're going to tell. So according to this map, this is what they've told us. The outer parts are the hunting areas. The shaded part in the middle is where we lived. And I say where we lived according to them, but according to what many of you all know, Utes are people who move. We're on a constant migration, which I'm always saying I am. So we basically were people who roamed and followed season. We also followed where the resources were located at. So this is the original domain or territory as we have been told by those authorities. So as time moved on, by 1868, now the area that we're allowed to roam is starting to decrease and access to this. And I say access. So today in these public spaces that we all desire to reach out to and recreate in and find solitude in, the word access means a lot to each and every one of us, doesn't it? Well, for me and my people, that was a way of life. So our way of life began to be encroached upon, and we had to live within a smaller confined area, so we began to feel corralled in. So by 1873, you can see there's a big chunk that now has been carved out. We all know in life, especially today, that when you ask an indigenous person what natural resources mean to them, they're going to say things like water, land, animals, vegetation, air. But now if you ask a non-native person, someone who doesn't live off the land like many indigenous people of the world do, they're going to say oil, gas, uranium, coal, stuff that take an invasive process to dig out of Mother Earth. So we're beginning to see the difference in how indigenous people view natural resources and how non-native people, non-indigenous people do, who don't necessarily live off the land the way we have. Because that was our life. That was how we hunted, that's how we gathered our food, that's how we supported our families. So we're seeing an area begin to decrease. This area here, the San Juan Secession, also is known as the Brunot area, which is actually an active treaty. We are one of the very few tribes in this country who still have an active treaty. But because of how the federal government viewed Native people, we weren't always viewed as humans. So, in terms of policy, well, an active treaty can only be negotiated between two sovereign nations. Well, if we're not considered human beings, then it does not fit the process of being treated as a treaty. But later on it became known rather as an agreement. This area here, the Brunot Agreement, the Brunot area now, is an area that we're allowed to hunt, to gather, and to fish. This is something we're allowed to do today in the carved out section here. It is not federal trust land, it's not a part of our reservation, but it is an active agreement where we are allowed to exercise our hunting, gathering, and fishing rights. So that's a very key component to how we're able to utilize the land even today. Whoops, I just disconnected that. Help! Oh, there it is. Let's see. Okay. So, something I always like to, in the middle of all of this change and seeing how land starts decreasing and land use and access for my people, I like to share a real important quote from Chief Ignacio. And he stated this in 1870, and this was a key time for decision making for the Utes. Quote says, "The whites did not keep their word. They give us land and a home where we have always lived. They eat bread and give us the crust." That basically says that when we do get some things taken away from us, it gets offered back to us. But how do you say, we're going to give you a home when we've always been here? When we've always occupied and utilized the land to help sustain our families and support them. And this is what he was saying. We don't get the benefit of eating the whole bread. We get the outer edges. We don't get the best part of the bread. But we're supposed to be thankful for what we get. And granted, we are thankful. We will say thank you. We will graciously walk away and say, oh, okay, all right, yay, let's cheer. So it's really hard for us sometimes to engage in some of the celebrations because we see, and our elders always communicate this, especially around the 4th of July, Columbus Day, which is quickly changed into something else, Christmas, even those types of holidays and celebrations, they technically were not ours. Because in all essence, I think each individual nation has different points and ceremonies within a 12-month cycle or 12-moon cycle that they will deem and identify as their new year. So for the Utes, our new year is springtime. When the bear wakes up, we conduct the bear dance, where life is starting to wake up. The little plants, the trees, things are coming back to life from being dormant through the winter time. That's our new year. It's not on the calendar. It's not even recognized in the state of Colorado. But we hear a lot of that contrast from our elders. Christmas is great for many of us who are in the working world. Yay, we get holidays and we don't have to go to work. So many times as Native people, Indigenous people, we have to kind of live in two different worlds. And sometimes quotes like this hit straight home and remind us. We're told to be thankful for something that we don't necessarily really believe in, know that existed as in our traditional culture and customs. But we do as we do. By 1972, this is what each of the three tribes, mind you, the Ute people as a whole, are now being grouped into what's called tribes. So tribe is not a term that's native to us. It doesn't even exist in our language. But what we do have is family. And bands are basically a collection of families. And so we all just kind of, per policy, have become tribes. And prior to the Southern Ute tribe and the Ute Mountain Ute tribe separating and being divided into two separate tribes, we were actually one tribe. We were the the Southern Ute people as a whole. We had one agency in the Ignacio area, but at that time it was called the Los Pinos Agency. Because of the allotment, which was a key moment in history for Native people, was when the federal government basically said, we're going to allow for your designated reservation areas to be divided into parcels of land, and those will be given to anyone who's 18 and over or has a family. The catch is you're going to have to work the land. And this is where some of the lifestyle began to change, and we as a free-moving people were now going to become farmers and work the land. Of the three tribes, the Ute Indian tribe, the Uinta-Ouray people were in northeastern Utah, then the Southern Ute and the Ute Mountain. Of the three Ute tribes, two went with the Allotment Act, but the Ute Mountain Ute did not. We are the only one of the three Ute tribes who has one contiguous landmass, and we all technically have a shared interest in that piece of land. Mind you, we all also have a right to those lands. We've kept what was originally given to us. If not, we're able to add more to that over the years, versus what has happened on the Uinta-Ouray and the Southern Ute reservations, where because of the allotment, it became easier for them to dispose of land. So their overall original landmass is no longer what it was when they were originally ceded that boundary and amount of land in total. So we've seen a lot of jurisdictional issues because people have disposed of land. So in the middle of the reservation, they may have sold it off to a non-native person. So it provides for a super complicated interaction for the tribe and the local government. So when we talk about healing, now can you see the complexities that we have to heal from? It's huge. Water. Ba. As we all can see, out west of town here, you see the receding water line. It's so obvious. It's actually a little hurtful to see that, because as my people and as many of us know, we cannot sustain life without water. And so the thought that Indigenous people have with water is that it's everything. It's our ceremonies, it's what we use to pray with. We will sacrifice days without food and water to offer prayer, thanks, and grace for water, because that's how much we value it. We have a relationship with water. And unfortunately, that is probably one of our biggest fights that we will have, because we have senior water rights on a lot of different bodies of water and waterways. But with water decreasing, it's really hard to survive. It's really hard to provide that to our people in our communities. So this is another challenge. And I say this on two fronts. We got to go without it. We continue to provide prayer for it. We pray with it. How do we heal? How do we heal as a community? And so as tribal communities, we come together and we try to sit at the table and have these discussions. Most of the time, they're very good discussions. Sometimes they're challenging. And I say challenging because as a tribe, I'm going to go back one slide. So you see here in 1972, the Ute Mountain Ute tribe just appears to have reservation and trust lands only in Colorado. But now today, we've actually acquired land in northern New Mexico, and we also have a small piece of land in southeastern Utah. We have to maneuver these different challenges. And with water being so important in life, it's really difficult when communities will literally say, I will not work with you, even if that is trying to provide a pipeline, a 1 mile stretch to provide water into a community. It's really difficult. All of which, these are types of conversations that do happen and have happened, and we're continuing to try to deal with. At the top here, this is actually a picture of the canal that the Ute Mountain Ute tribe built in the late 1980s, I think, if I'm not correct, around 85, 86. We were allowed water to be canaled into the community, and that was probably leading up to the first time that the Ute Mountain Ute tribe and people actually farmed. My people didn't farm until 1987. It took us this long to finally figure out that we needed to take part in some sort of agriculture. But one of the reasons why we couldn't was we didn't have access to water until this time. The picture on this far right side here is Lake Nighthorse. And this is an interesting conversation. So that's a part of the Animas La Plata project, which was a part of, both of which were water access was awarded through what's known as the Ute Water Settlement Act. But Lake Nighthorse, largely in part, is a water storage for the Ute people, with the Southern Ute and the Ute Mountain being holding senior water rights. But when the Animas La Plata project was settled in Congress, one of the big things that was taken out of the appropriations was water delivery. So imagine a container of water sitting on a shelf, and all you can do is look at it. That's the position my people are in. We have this beautiful lake, which recently now has recreation allowed on it, but we can't get that water to the Ute Mountain Ute tribe and the communities there. So these are both interesting ways that the tribe has to maneuver through some of the difficulties and challenging conversations. Some pictures here that are real important in trying to maneuver through the discussion, and something that I like to share with my children and my grandchildren, and any time I have the opportunity to speak to people. And that's just taking the opportunity to be grateful for what you have, grateful for the resources in your life, and thankful for even the elements. So I have a picture, the picture here up on this left side, and you can see, I don't know if any of you can tell, but this actually is a shade house structure. And a lot of you may see those in museums where the Utes may have had brush structures. And you can see my son is actually pulling a few brush away from that. We were actually breaking camp. But this is at our Sundance. This is during the summer where we build these structures for shade. We utilize what's on the near the areas where we can take trees and provide some shade for a 3-day weekend, sometimes 4, in the middle of the summertime in support of our dancers. So if our family has a dancer, then that means we have somebody who is fasting for 3 or 4 days. No food, no water. So we're very mindful. We stay out in the local area there, and we partake of songs for them. We're the ones who sing their songs, but we also make sure that they have dry bedding, because the whole point of that is to get away from moisture, to give up the use of water. And so we're the support system for them. But we get to eat. Our dancers don't. So we have to almost be in a state of meditation. But at the same time, it's a way that we can celebrate when they come out, because now we have every reason to be thankful because our family member just went without drinking water and eating food for 3 or 4 days. So we celebrate. And that's sometimes something that we don't always do. In the midst of challenge, in the midst of anger, we forget that it's okay to return to a place where you can celebrate the fact that you actually came through those challenges and triumphed. I have a picture of a deer, one that we came across when we were up to the Bears Ears Buttes this past summer during their gathering. I also have a picture here of a teepee and another brush structure. This was also during another Sundance in Ignacio during the Southern Utes annual Sundance. I have a flower, but even more importantly, I have a photo of a fire pit. Sometimes we look at fire in many different ways, but a lot of times we look at it, especially this year, because we really had a tough year with fire. It has acquired a bad rap, but it's basically an element that our Creator has given to us as a gift. And it was interesting because I have to recount a conversation with my father, because during our Sundance on the Ute Mountain, we had a fire ban, and they completely banned fire. The only fire that could happen was within the Sundance Lodge itself. And I was like, well, I'd hate for the mountain to catch on fire. That would be truly horrifying. I don't know what I would do, what I would think. And it was until my father said, yeah, but what is the whole ceremony without fire? Our people don't get to utilize the fire to cook, to keep warm, to burn our cedar on. It's a very important aspect of the whole weekend and experience. And then I realized for a second there, I forgot about the ceremonial value of what fire meant to the ceremony as a whole. I was coming at it and looking at it through a different lens that I think I was almost more fearful of what could happen without thinking about I needed to pray with that fire. I forgot that when a fire is burning, you can share your deepest fears, your most intimate moments that maybe you're not afraid, you may be afraid to share with others, but that fire is going to listen. That fire is going to keep that sacred for you. That's what I forgot. I forgot who I was in the midst of being more fearful of the damage that fire could do because we were surrounded by so many fires. And my dad reminded me that we needed to be thankful for what it is. So I thought that picture of a fire pit was truly important because I know many of us, we approach the end results with the worst to begin with, and we forget we should actually maybe approach it with a better light and remember what things really truly are and not necessarily let the bigger world influence some of the things we know better. We know. We just forget. So how do we heal? How can we heal? How many of you like to have conversations with your grandparents or wish you could? How many of you love to talk to young people? Aren't they great? I mean, today I can honestly say I woke up this morning and I had very little energy, but I can tell you the young people are the ones who brought me through it. Whether it was sharing a story about someone feeling thankful for something that we planned and it got executed and they were extremely grateful for that opportunity, whether it was being in the classroom today in the settings and having those opportunities to share my experience and hearing some of those experiences from the young people today, that gave me a sense of healing. But that also gave me a sense of hope. And sometimes when we're feeling so beat and so tired and exhausted emotionally and physically, sometimes that exchange is all we need for a sense of healing. I shared a song with you all tonight. because that's where I find a lot of my healing, through songs that have come through the test of time, that are old, that my father taught, my grandfather taught and shared with us, and I can sing. But even more so, if there's something that I hear and I can create a song, then I feel a sense of healing and gratitude, because that had to come from somewhere, that connection from somewhere. And that's how I reach points of healing. And that's why I would like to be able to say I inspire young people to reach for those things. I would inspire anybody to tell your story through whatever mechanism that is. Because not only is it your opportunity to share, but you can take some of your hurt and heal with your drawings, heal with your songs, heal with a poem. But more importantly, what we don't always acknowledge is it's our opportunity to heal with other people. Sometimes in order to move past some of those differences is important, and how we do that. And as Indigenous people, we have so many complicated layers of reasons why we need to heal. Sometimes that is overwhelming. How do we do that? And one of my favorite ways is just having a conversation. But I'm actually honored to say that I have had the opportunity to do it in many different ways. So down on the far left corner here, do you guys recognize that gentleman? Governor Hickenlooper? Just taking those moments and having your elevator speech prepared. You know, I honestly can say I actually had the opportunity to share those spaces. And in the larger scheme of this, I actually felt a little sense of relief that maybe I can bring a little bit of my ancestors' healings to a good point of being able to share what's in my heart and what my ancestors have come through. So it's a small moment of triumph. I've learned to heal with my fellow leaders. And this is actually the former chairman of the business committee for the Uinta Ore tribe, or Ute Indian tribe of Utah. And he was actually at that position, was conducting a roundtable in Telluride. I think earlier today, I did a podcast. I also was very fortunate to do another podcast in Washington, D.C., Thinking Cap. I've done things with Democracy Now! These all have helped me to raise my voice, to help bring a sense of many generations of healing to the forefront. But one of the biggest challenges that I've had to confront is taking the courageous step and just doing it. To guard our traditional knowledge, to guard the ecological knowledge, and to honor our ancestors, elders, and even more so our children that are here today and those are yet to come. And just to continue and conduct those prayers and our way of life. Many of you might think that you don't have tradition or custom and culture, but you do. Sometimes I've heard people say, well, I was adopted and actually I'm not quite sure what my lineage is. But you do have a tradition. Wherever you were raised at, whoever you were raised with, somebody handed something down to you in that moment. Although you feel a little incomplete, you really shouldn't, because somebody cared enough to have you in their safe space, in their sacred times, and you really do have it. We just need to learn how to give ourselves permission to celebrate and to embrace the thought that you don't have to compare yourself to the next person, because you do have it. Be thankful And that's something that my grandmothers continually reminded me of, especially as a young person. As a young person, you think, oh God, the world is coming to an end. I was a teenager in the 80s. Oh God, Lord, did I say that? Yes. I was a teenager in the 80s. And I don't know if many of you remember this or even read about this. In the 80s, California was supposed to drop off the face of the earth. 1999 was coming, and good Lord, the world was going to end. We didn't know if we were going to be in a nuclear war. We didn't know if we had a tomorrow. Every day was like, oh, the sun rose again. At some point, you get overwhelmed by just the physical news. And I think at that point, we could have said that's fake news, right? Because it's 2018, and we're a long ways from 1980 something. But, I think sometimes we do get overwhelmed. We do need to stop and just be thankful for what it is we have. And Grandma was always like, you're going to wake up tomorrow. She was right. So some pictures that I like to share, because I am very thankful that I have opportunity to share great stories and spaces with my family, with young people. And so, can you read this? Do you honor us? And in the middle there, I'm standing there with another very energetic young person who is studying a lot of the natural foods that our indigenous people utilized. And she's very dynamic. She just recently finished her degree in nutrition, and really has put how she's using that is going back and rediscovering and helping communities understand that our diet and how we survived off the land is still out there. And so she's helped a lot of communities identify resources that don't always have to be found on aisle 13 in the supermarket. So she's a dynamic young lady, and we've done a lot of presentations together. Sometimes they call us the super women of Bears Ears. And then another young person, and the sign that this young person is holding is "Water is life." I love these pictures. I really love this picture because this little man here is my grandson. And I always said, a family that protests together stays together, right? So both of those, the two outer pictures of the young people there, we actually walked 5 miles from the White Mesa community to the White Mesa Mill. These young people stuck it out with us. My grandson had the cutest little pink cheeks, but it was a tremendous opportunity to share a moment. But it was also, although what it may have appeared to be a protest, raising of a voice, standing up for something right, but it was very healing to know that I wasn't alone, that I had young people who felt important enough to walk with us. And the biggest honor that I can ever say every day is to know that my grandchildren and my children take this walk with me. That is very healing. The future. The picture up here is one of my favorite pictures. It was actually taken this past spring when we took a delegation to the United Nations in New York. And the young lady on the left there, her name is Jasmine Felipe. She is of the Acoma Pueblo. And I remember before everything kind of got started and, the podium up at the front was being empty, and I said, hey, I want a picture with you and that young lady right there with the stripe on her face. And she's like, shall I go tell her you with the stripe on the face? I said, no. I said, but ask her what that is. And so we both walked up. Of course, she says, come on. And she calls me her mom. She goes, come on, Mom, we're going to go find out what this stuff is. And I was like, okay. So we asked this young lady. It turns out she's from South America. But the paint on her face basically is like the red earth paint. And we asked her, is there a significance to that? Is there a meaning? And she said, yes. We put that on for protection. It also identifies what group of people we come from. And it was real interesting because we all wear red paint on our face for protection. My people, we wear it on our foreheads, we wear it on the sides of our eyes, and we put it on our heart and on our back. So it was real interesting to find a group of people from a different location on our Mother Earth wear red earth paint for a similar reason. And it reminded us that we're really not that far from one another. And it was one of the greatest moments. And I said, can you girls just hold your fist up like, we're flexing our muscle? They were like, yeah. I basically staged this picture with these two young ladies, but as soon as I started taking a picture, I had hundreds of other people taking this picture. I have no doubt this picture has traveled the world. So I'm very proud of this young lady, all of which is following a lot of guidance and a lot of direction from me. Actually, tonight, she took her parents to meet with another group. And so she's sharing her culture, but she's also found a voice to be able to do the same type of healing through running, which is why we took her to the UN. I love my family, so this is why they're all in my presentation. So this is our latest edition. That's my grandbaby who was born earlier this spring. Her name is Cece, and my grandson there. But this is one important picture that I really love, because the gift of knowledge, the healing and being able to pass the knowledge on and see it actually in action. And that's what this picture to me signifies. This is my daughter, and this is my daughter-in-law. My son was actually Sundancing this year. So that meant that our family, specifically the females, had a role. We had a duty and an obligation. We had things that we had to do. And my daughter, she said, Mom, when I go to do this, I want to dress in our traditional dress. And I was like, ooh, okay, sure. We'll get you fixed up. So we made her a ribbon dress. And she said, Mom, I want to wear the bandana like the grandmas did. She said, I want to honor my grandmas. So I'm like, ooh, whose child is this? We had to get up like really early. What we do on Sundays is, during the ceremony, Sundays is the day that we as females will go out for greens, because if they've been dancing for 3 days up to that point, they're probably pretty hot, and heat exhaustion is starting to set in. And a way that we utilize the greens and our environment is we'll go out and collect willows that grow near water, and then we take it into them, and then they use that to help cool their body. And so what my daughter and my daughter-in-law did was they took my son his greens for that day. And we always tease, we always like, well, there's their happy meals. They're not eating, so that's their happy meal. And I was very proud of her that day, because my mother couldn't make it. I couldn't go there for various reasons. And these young ladies stepped up. But they did it without having me directly by their side, or their grandmother, her grandmother by her side. So they really demonstrated some autonomy with the guidance of myself and my mother. So we were on the phone, or texting them, and thank God that we could text. But we were giving them their directions and what they needed to do, how they needed to do it, where they needed to go, and they did it. And this is on the mountain, because our sacred Sundance site is located on top of the Ute Mountain. and it's not very accessible. It's closed off to the public, but this is all within good reason. And you can see that these are actually community people that are out there waiting for well, actually, I think they were singing at that time. So, it was actually occurring in and about that time. And they did it. That was a very, very proud moment for me, a sense of relief and a sense of gratefulness that the knowledge is going to live. The young lady here is my oldest granddaughter, who is actually her daughter. So some of the healing aspects and some of the things that we've done. Over the past couple of years, something that has been hard, it seems like, and forthcoming is to engage in prayer as a community, as a group, and even more so with the young people. And this is what we're doing here. We're facing toward the sun, and an elder was saying the prayer as we got ready to start the Bears Ears Prayer Alliance Run and March, which at the end of that whole trek, which many of the tribes, the Pueblo tribes, and several from the Navajo communities ran in towards Bears Ears. We logged in over 800 miles altogether, with the furthest stretch starting out in Santa Ana near Bernalillo, New Mexico. So this is a way that the young people are saying, we want to engage and be grateful, but we also want to be, and they were very grateful about saying, thank you for reintroducing us to our homelands. Right there was this huge, huge, grateful moment, and I was ready to burst at the seams because I was like, there was a time when I had no hope, and I used to cry because I was seeing a lot of angry young people. I was seeing a lot of young people feeling hopeless, to the point where we actually seen several young people commit suicide. It was a genuine point of hopelessness that I didn't know what we were going to do as a people. But now I'm very hopeful because now I'm seeing a resurgence of our people healing themselves. But we're not doing it alone, we're doing it together. And how we're doing it through activities like running together, running for a reason, being out on the land and engaging in prayer together. But we can't forget where we came from. So this picture here, I don't know if any of you recognize that. That's actually the council tree in Delta. This was actually taken just a couple of hours before they cut it down. That's a huge tree. I don't know if any of you have been there. If you haven't, there's still 20 feet of it left, the base of it. And if you just ever get the opportunity to be over there and swing on through and see the council tree, you will see that there's no way you could ever hug that tree. That tree is so massive. It's massive in size, but can you imagine the massive amounts of stories it could tell if it could talk? This is a place where my leaders, the traditional leaders of the Utes, would gather. Many generations of leaders that would come to speak about what was happening out on the land, what they were seeing in terms of changes and amounts of resources. What were some of the threats they were seeing? The encroachment of non-natives. And I really would like to say that they were talking about land management issues that they were seeing on the land. We weren't recording it though, but these were the same discussions happening around this tree. So this picture over here is actually, and you can see two people here. And then you see these massive trees. This is actually in Mesa Verde. And the two standing there at the base of that tree really truly represent a sense of healing and a super moment for me, because one is my friend and one is my new friend who's from China. We met this young man in Mesa Verde, and he was by himself, and before you know it, we had this super dynamic conversation going. His similarities, some of the stuff he was seeing on display, how that looked like things from what his people make. And it was finding the similarities in his culture and how they used resources, and him just having an impromptu guided tour by real indigenous people. How cool is that? We didn't have to pay to get into the park, but he did. So we thought, we were off to the side. I was like, do you know how much this guy paid? And he goes, yeah. So, well, we better make his money worth it. So we started out on a 2-mile hike. It ended up being 6. It really was symbolic in how two worlds could cross and intersect each other. And it was real interesting because to hear the size of pine trees in China versus what he was seeing massive right in front of him at Mesa Verde. So through all of this, and even through moments as we're healing and as we're talking through relationship development and just being plain old friends, it can get exhausting. It can become overwhelming. And I found this very true with some of the work that I did as a tribal leader, being one of the main spokespeople for the protection, continued access, and preservation of a land that was very important to us. This became very overwhelming. But it was through the traditional teachings of my grandmother, many grandmothers, by the way, and my mom, who always said, if it becomes too overwhelming, just take some time in prayer and give it up to the Creator, because He'll know what to do with it. But how do you reach those points? When do you acknowledge that you are exhausted and that you do have to have faith in a higher power? Well, in my culture, as a Ute, there's a word that has meant a lot to me. Amanik. To sit still, be quiet, become a listener and an observer, but also to open oneself up to many, many different senses, the silence and embracing it. I didn't know that that was going to be the center to my healing, because I had so much that I had to reconcile, so many different experiences, so much that was going to be overwhelming. The learning curve was huge. The movement in DC and in any metropolitan is so fast-paced. How does one not feel overwhelmed? And then I had to be thankful for the teachings of my grandmothers. Regina, sit still. Just listen. Feel your own heartbeat. And as soon as I would get home, I would make sure that I would find a place that I could sit in solitude. And for me to be high in elevation, to feel my heartbeat, I don't know about you all, but when you get high in elevation, you do start feeling your heartbeat. But being able to take that time to calm yourself down, to feel it, but to acknowledge it. Hear her voice, whispers in my ear, be still, be quiet. That's what my grandma used to tell me. Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to share this space with you. Thank you for allowing me to come back home. And thank you for honoring me and listening to me. Someday I'll return, and when I do, I know I have family. Thank you.